Hi, everyone. Welcome to our cmBuilder user webinar tips and tricks session. So this is going to be a pretty technical, hands-on type session. The goal being getting more value out of the nuances of digital construction simulation and planning, and different types of workflows from various editing softwares into Builder and stuff like that. I am joined today by the incomparable, the man, the myth, the legend, Pedro Souza. He is our customer success manager for cmBuilder and in charge of all things customer success. He's also going to be joined today by Cal Tucker, construction simulation specialist for us, and a man who's on the tools on our side. And so we appreciate everyone joining. So I'm going to dive in just for not everyone that's joining and signed up for today is a user. Some are interested in using. I'm just going to take 3 minutes and explain at a high level what cmBuilder is and why we built it, what problem we're trying to solve. So I'm going to show a couple things here. So, and by the way, I'm co-founder of CAD Makers and developer of cmBuilder.io. My name's Javi. So what is cmBuilder? We're on the goal to build an operating system for construction planning, really heavily focused on site logistics and the pre-construction phase. After we've been working on this for quite some time, and the problem that we identified in the market when working with our general contractor, construction manager customers, are that there's lots of technology and effort going into other parts of the whole design, planning, construction, and say post-construction phases. But when it comes to site logistics and your general conditions, all the temporary resources that go into building a project, that can be up from 10 to 20% of the total construction cost, and often are a risk that the general contractor or construction manager will take. They take themselves. There's a big risk to the project, and there's not a lot of tools in the market to solve that. Pre-construction tools teams are using data and efficient technology to do this, mostly 2D, mostly in the heads of smart people who've been around for a long time. There are some legacy products in the market, but they're either too expensive or too complex. So in terms of digital planning for the site logistics piece, there hasn't been much market penetration at scale, mostly only at the top firms, so I'd say the top 5th percentile of the world, and often the market at scale is using more data technology for this purpose. So we set out to solve this problem. How? We built a web platform, makes it easy for users to digitally simulate accurately bidding, winning, and planning construction projects. Allows you to model directly in 3D in your browsers, of 100% web-based application. So you're able to author and create new resources directly in your browser. You're able to simulate construction sequencing with milestones in 4D, quantify elements automatically, and then share live links, not files. So make it really accessible from an ease of use perspective, but also accessible for your downstream collaborators to get information and sharing, instead of exporting files, saving it somewhere, uploading it. You just have live links that people can access without credentials and run it directly on their browser. What's our future vision? We think that every single project of size should be simulated first, right? And maybe with multiple scenarios, studying different types of sequencing options, different type of temporary resources like 1 crane versus 2 crane, mobile crane versus tower crane or fixed crane, these types of things. And the way that we think that will happen is that it has to be fast, it has to be easy to use, and cost effective. So if we can build it, we believe that every single project in the future will be simulated first and be done by the people. The work will be done by the people who are actually building the project itself. So that's our future vision. Every single project simulated first, really easy to do, really fast, and making better decisions, reducing risk and saving money. I will stop there, and I'm going to pass it over to Cal. Cal's going to take it from here. We're going to dive into the technical part of the session today.
Hello all. Yeah, as Javi mentioned, I'll be going through the initial kind of site setup and sort of the model conversions of the webinar. I'll kind of run through an agenda really quick, try not to bore you too much initially. But I'll be running through the project setup, setting up the site, setting up the address, updating the map tile. A huge part of how successful your simulation will be is how you convert the model and how you get it into Builder, the building blocks you start with, and then creating several studies along with the scenario duplication. Pedro will then run you through the best practices for model positioning, excavation tips and updates, CM feedback entry types, and the user guide access. I'll flip through. So for the first site setup, initial site setup, I'll create a brand new project here. 101 demo project, obviously just a made up project. I have a address already. Post Ave in Seattle there. And you can see that'll auto-generate a view in the map, and you can select between the topographic and flat map, and as well as you can choose the map tile size. You can select between small, medium, and large. Basically, the larger the map size, the more data is involved, and it'll start up a little bit slower, but I'll create that. Oh, apparently I must have used that name. 102 demo, probably used that one moments ago. Perfect. And you can create a thumbnail, which will kind of just make it a bit more organized within your company cmBuilder account. It'll have the title, then it'll show the map. The first thing you always want to do whenever you're creating a new project is to double check the map tile. The map tile, once you've added models, added a scenario, you can't update the map tile. So kind of making sure that that's set up the way you want is the first step within any project. So I've just created a scenario here so that I can view it. You also can view it easily just by clicking on the map icon that shows up on the project homepage. But you can kind of see the project here. This is going to be the site for the project. We can see there's just a little bit of ocean showing, but there's a lot of the city, a lot of extra these high towers, and it's not super relevant for this project. So if that were to be the case, we can just come all the way back to the project homepage up here, 102, delete the scenario. You actually have to delete the scenario before you update the map tile. I'll refresh, and we can update the address after that. So if we want to have a little bit more of the ocean shown, we can switch it to there, update the map. We'll keep it as the small, keep it as the topographic, update the address, and the same process. Create another scenario. Do its load. You can see there's now some more of the ocean shown. Have a bit of a clear view of the ocean, a bit more of the major freeway, which is going to be pretty significant in the construction and logistics, visible, and just to whatever preference is you're looking for. For the map tile, I'll show this slide, which gives a bit more explanation. If you were to have the address located right here, basically what cmBuilder is going to do is it's going to find the closest node of the map tiles, which are generated by the map software that we gathered the map from, and it's going to grab the 4 tiles closest to it. So let's say if the address, instead of being right here, was right here, it would instead grab these 4 map tiles, and that's why it will make sometimes a fairly significant difference of where that is. And then the difference between the flat and the topographic map is illustrated here. Topographic will just show the terrain, hills that are in the area, and the flat map is a little bit faster to load, but it's much better for drawing overlays. So if it is a relatively flat terrain and excavation QTO isn't one of your primary purposes, I would definitely recommend the flat map. It just makes it a little bit more easy. But if it is an area that's quite hilly and that's important to show, or you're going to be doing an excavation QTO, topographic is definitely the preferred method.
Yeah.
Now we're going to
count. Can I just add something here? Can you go back on the previous slide? Yeah, just to showcase that these map tiles, they are already predefined, right? So it's something that is a service of the satellite service that we use already give us this information. And from that information, we generate the topography of the terrain, right? So it's all created by satellites. And I just want to stress out that that's the reason why your pin will almost never be in the center of your map tile, the generated map tile, just because these are all predefined, right? So even though you move the selection of your address a little bit to the side, a little bit to the other side, what's going to happen is we're going to go and generate your map tile again, but from the next tier of tiles that are adjacent to it, right? So it's just a little tip on that as well.
Absolutely. And once you have the project set up, you can import models. Every scenario will be connected to a building set. You can have multiple scenarios connected to one building set. However, you can only have one building set connected to a scenario. When you're in the building set, you can upload models, and that, as I mentioned, was probably the most important part of having a successful simulation. I'll run through a couple. Oh, I lost the password. I'll throw that in quick. Perfect. So a couple different softwares. It depends what you're coming from, what your architect is using, what the structural engineer is using, wherever you're getting the models from. Some of the common ones are Revit, Tekla, and Sketchup. For all three of those softwares, we would recommend going to an IFC file format for the import, which cmBuilder can handle. From Navisworks, FBX is the preferred file format. There's a couple of different methods as well, tips and tricks. Trick number one is if you have a Revit native file, and you can export FBX directly from Revit, but the tree structure is not going to be very organized, and it will be difficult to work with in cmBuilder. However, Navisworks, which comes as a package bundle currently with Revit, so you will likely have a Navisworks managed if you have a Revit subscription already. It can open an FBX Revit file directly in Navisworks, and then you can export that as the FBX file. We'll be supplying these slides afterwards for anyone who's trying to frantically jot notes or anything. You'll have the slides and can use those for reference. But this is basically a project that we have in Revit. And if you wanted, as we mentioned, you can export directly as IFC, which is a good method to do it. Or you could export as FBX, but as we said, the tree structure will not be super usable. Before you export, you want to look at kind of the complexity of the model and what's going to bring value. The more detail you have in the export and it's uploaded into Builder, the slower the model will run. There's some pretty significant improvements we've made recently on the cmBuilder converting engine, one of which being chunking, which will allow our converter to break it up into smaller pieces and do them all simultaneously. Even that being said, having the architectural walls and all the MEPF fittings is just a lot of extra data and will not necessarily provide a lot of value in your construction simulation. So depending on the use case, we would definitely recommend filtering out some elements. The easiest way to do that in Revit is to just go into the visibility and graphics, which is under the file. And you can actually go through every single one of these is included in the model. So you can see conduit fittings. I've already gone through and hidden these just because it wasn't relevant, but you can either select to show them or not show them. And you can just go through and choose exactly what you're wanting to have in your final output. So floors are important, for example, but MEPF fabrication, none of that stuff is going to be particularly relevant for most construction simulations. And then when you're doing your final export, expand this, there's some important options you'll want to select when exporting the IFC. A menu should pop up here. So for the current selected setup, it's going to be the in-session setup. And you actually go into the modify setup to select some of the settings. For the IFC version, IFC 2x3 coordination view is the recommended file format. There's also IFC 4, which will work as well. Then you'll want to make sure you select split walls, columns, and ducts by level. So structural engineers will have columns going through entire towers, and same with mechanical consultants with ducts or MEPF risers. And it will, as far as Revit's concerned, be one column the entire way through the tower. And that's not particularly useful if you're trying to simulate pouring the individual levels one after the other. So this check will just break up these very long elements based off the floor level, which the architects will define. And then the other one would be going into the additional content and selecting export only visible in view. So that will basically have your visibility and graphic settings translate into the export so that you don't export all of the detail that you've hidden already. So that's the model import from Revit. Again, all this will be provided at the end, so you'll be able to go back for reference. Next one would be for Navisworks. As I mentioned, a really easy way is you can open up the Revit file in Navisworks already and then export as an FBX file. But this is going to be what it looks like when you open up in Navisworks. This is a very simple project, just as massing. Have a couple different complexities of projects through the various softwares, but anything will work in Navisworks as well. It'll show up with a very long list with all the levels broken up into all the different disciplines and all the components. And you can go through the tree and manually hide individual elements. You just right click and hide. It's also Control H is the hotkey. And Navisworks automatically will only export what is visible in the viewer, so you don't have to have any special selections for that. We can go through and hide the individual elements, especially if it's a very large tower. Let's say there's 40 floors and you want to hide all the MAPF components. That could be very, very labor intensive, going through every single floor and doing it manually. So there is a find items selection as well. So you can use a lot of these menus to help you manually sort through the tree. If you do item, then there's a name. Oh, sorry, a name. Perfect. Condition contains, and you can put in any name. So for this, it'll be pretty easy. I'll search grass, find all, and it'll select. But if there was, as I mentioned, 40 elements and you're looking for MEPF pipes, that would speed up the process significantly rather than going through every individual element. And then Control H to hide, and that will be hidden. And then if you go back to output, you can output that as an FBX file. And then there's also Sketchup is a commonly used software, IFC export using these settings. And then for all of the IFC exports, so a lot of them will come through as an IFC, or you could even request it if you're a general contractor who doesn't have any of these expensive 3D modeling softwares. You can request an IFC file format, and then you'll be able to use BIM Vision with the plugin of the IFC splitter to manually sort through the file yourself. It's quite easy to do in BIM Vision, and the plugin is very cheap as well. But you can sort by structure here, and you can see that will give you all the different levels. You can hide and show by level or by types as well. You can kind of show the different elements just by easily selecting. And then you can also split using a plane. So if you were wanting to split the two towers, for example, you can do that quite easily. And then you can simulate them separately, which is a nice capability. And you can export visible or export active to simplify the files in that manner. So once you have added the model or simplified the models, you can upload them into the building set. I've kind of skipped through the process here and gone to a existing project, which already has many different scenarios, 2 crane scenarios, various stages of construction, different scenarios to share with different stakeholders at different times in the project. And yeah.
1 second. Can you go back to the presentation? And go into the slide that shows the tricks. So just to talk about William's question here on the chat. So William is asking if we should bring one single model that has everything to it into Builder, or split them beforehand in Revit or Navisworks. So it's always go case by case, of course, but we always suggest that you split those models beforehand, just because you're going to be working with different chunks of disciplines that are relevant in different points in time while you're bringing it to Builder, right? So, and of course, it's easier to upload those smaller models because we are doing this through a browser, right? So we usually take a lot of bandwidth from the internet connection, and to doing that with smaller chunks is just faster, right? So we suggest that you would take that model first in Revit or Navisworks, filter them out per architecture, for example, or per structure, and just export one model for structure, one model for envelope, and whatever is relevant for your logistics planning, right? So later on, I will show you how to snap those models together, but it's a good practice to bring in separate files.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. Definitely a good point. So we'll go into the duplication now. So if you're going to share with different stakeholders or to represent a 2 crane scenario versus a 1 crane scenario, or perhaps just delete a whole bunch of milestones that aren't relevant to a specific subtrade, you can go in and you can duplicate the scenarios. When you have this duplicate scenario, you'll be able to select which elements of the scenario you would like to duplicate. This is has all the obvious perks, but another big one is if you're trying to upgrade or update the model. So if you were at 50% CD set, but now you have an IFC model from the architect, and you're wanting to keep all of your existing site logistics and all your work that you put in with the resources used, the excavation, the site laydowns, the markups, you can do that, and you can duplicate the scenario and actually unselect the import 3D models. So when you unselect the import 3D models, it'll create exactly the same scenario, just without any models in it, as the name suggests. And then that will have its own building set linked to it. So you can now add the existing buildings or add the updated buildings, and then just redo the hide show operations, but all the work done in cmBuilder will still be remaining. The other alternative is if you were not wanting to keep the previous set for a record, you could also just add the new buildings in, snap them to location, and then delete the old buildings out of the building set. And I will now pass it off to Pedro.
Okay, Cal, thanks a lot for this. Yeah, so let me share my screen here, and I will talk about a little bit about like model positioning and excavation and how to provide feedback for our team, right? So what I have open here is a project that already has a drawing overlay done, and it is a flat topographic scenario, right? So like my map, it's all flat. And if you whenever you bring in models into cmBuilder, they will show up in the space like this, right? They will show up hovering up on top of your map because they need to be located, right? So, and if you have more than one model that you imported, that those models will always be connected, will be aligned together here in cmBuilder if they have the same base point, right? So if you're bringing model from the same origin, you just filter them out and you exported several different models, and you bring them all over here, they will be snapped together, they will have the same reference point. However, if these models come from different consultants that created the same model, let's say one created the structural design on Tekla and the other one created the architectural design on Revit and so on, if they don't share the same base point, they won't show up with the same reference, right? cmBuilder will just place them in the middle of the map like this, okay? So if you want to see all the models that you've imported into cmBuilder, what you do is you click on cmBuilding or buildings, building location. In all these cards over here, they will show up the different models that you have imported. So right now, if I select this one, it will focus on the model that I have. If I select this one, it will focus on the MEPF for level 1, and this will focus on the column connections that are over here in the middle of the building, okay? So one thing that I think is important for us to mention is that whenever you bring an FBX imports usually coming from Navisworks, they have their Z reference pointing sideways and the Y reference pointing up. So it's different from when the model comes from Revit, where your Z reference is pointing up, right? So usually, just to showcase how it would look like, if a model is coming from Navisworks, the model will look something like this, right? So this is basically how Navisworks imports. So what you can do when this model comes into Builder is you click twice on the model and you click on this rotate menu over here. And when you click on the rotate menu, you see these discs that allow you to rotate your model, right? So right now I'm gonna hold the shift button because the shift button will allow me to rotate this model into different directions, but with increments of 45 degrees. So it's easier to simply hold shift, click on one of the disks, and then rotate it on the direction that you want, right? So this is snapping to 45 degrees, which is easier for me to simply get the model in the right location, okay? So right now I'm gonna locate this model at this location over here. I already have my drawing overlay done, and I just wanna bring this model to the right location. So basically what you do is you double click on the model so you can expose the translation handles. And it's always good whenever you want to reference a 3D element to a 2D element. For example, I'm referencing my building to a drawing. I always like to change this to a 2D view, because I will make sure that I'm not working with, I'm not like being, my vision is not distorted by the perspective, right? So I'm always looking with 2D references and no depth to it, right? So what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to simply rotate this model and into an angle that will fit up this drawing over here. And I'm going to change this to a translate and select the plane. So in cmBuilder, you can select both the arrows or this little square over here, which is the plane, to move into different directions at the same time, right? So now I'm going to bring it to my orthographic view and bring it down. So there's one thing that I'd like to show over here, is that whenever you double click on a model, this little menu will show up and you have a couple of options over here below. So if I click on switch to global position, what I'm going to see is this little matrix that show me the X and Y and Z position according to the local reference that I have in this 3D environment, right? So if I want to move to rotation, I can also click on my rotate over here and have my X, Y, and Z rotation according to my local references. And what you're seeing over here, that the handles are over here in like way below the model, is because we are looking at the part origin. So this model has their own origin, like I mentioned before, and these handles will be snapped to that part origin. But if I want to change where these handles are located, I can change this to my local origin. So local origin will basically track wherever I click and place my handles in the click position, right? So let me, like this model is a little bit complicated. So let me show how this looks like with a simpler model. So see, while activating my part origin, all the handles are showing wherever I'm clicking, okay? So these two combined, both the part and local origin plus the global positioning, gives you more control in terms of like where I'm going to place this building, where I'm going to place my resources. Keep in mind that what I'm telling right now, it can be applied for resources, can be applied for 2D drawings, surrounding building, massing, every single 3D object that is in this environment, okay? So I'm going to roughly place this model over here into location because I want to move to my auto positioning my model. Okay, so my model now is in the right location. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to close this and I'm going to lock this model. So this model is now locked. It won't be moved. And I'm going to bring back the other drawings, the other models that I hid, right? So remember when I said before that we had the column connections in the 2D, the level 1 MEP. So these are separate models that came from different consultants. What I can do right now to place them accordingly is I'm going to the editing function for one of these models. I'm going to click on the auto positioning, and then I'm going to select the other model that I already positioned. So now they're going to be snapped together. So you cannot see because it's an internal element, but they were snapped together. I'm going to do the same thing with this other guy over here, and done. Now I have all my models in the right location. Okay. So this is a little bit about that. And just like Cal mentioned, we recently created a new conversion engine that allows this whole model importing, the model loading, and even the performance while navigating with these models quite faster. And I would like to mention one thing that is interesting whenever working with this is that you can always jump through your 3D and 2D views by clicking here on this little switch. But if there is any side menu that blocks up these buttons, you can go into your viewer control and change them through here as well. Perspective, orthographic, and 2D. Orthographic is a really interesting one because you have kind of like a little bit of both worlds. You have the parallel view plus a 3D view, so you can navigate better whenever positioning model elements in the 2D view. Okay. So before I move on to the excavation, I want to mention one thing as well, is that cmBuilder is a web browser application, right? So this is running on a browser, it's running in Chrome. It means that every single thing that we do that is new, every update that we roll out, even if it's a bug fix or a new feature or simply like small changes, it will be automatically applied to your account, automatically applied to whatever scenarios you are using at the moment. However, because it's a browser, some of these elements, of these configurations are stored in your cache. So if there is an update that we roll out, you receive the notification about that, and you haven't seen that updated applied to your computer, specifically to your account specifically, what we always suggest you to do is to do a hard refresh. So a hard refresh, you simply hold the Control button and you hit R or Control and F5. And that will make a hard refresh. We're going to clear the cache just for the cmBuilder session, and we're going to fill that cache with all the new configurations that we've rolled out. Okay, just a quick thing that it's interesting to know. Okay, cool. So I'm going to move on to the excavation updates that we have over here and a little bit of the tricks. So
hey, Pedro, let me cut you off. There's a question from Will, if you want to read it out, just about what do you do when the imported models have different orientations?
That just applies the same transform to the models that have the same internal reference point. But if each imported model has different origin or rotation, you still need to transform them each manually, right? Yeah, for now, this is what you do. But like what I like to do is to create some reference marks that allows me to have some like global references. So for example, let's say that you were working with this 3D model and you're going to bring in something that is like, let's say, a mechanical model that is inside the building, right? So I would find out one specific element in this model that I can use as my reference. So for example, these penetrations, and I can use that penetration to bring in the model and locate it accordingly, right? So it's not always easy to find these references, but you can use faces, you can use specific snapping points, and so on and so forth, okay?
You could also overlay a 2D drawing, right? And then on top of the slab, let's say for that MEP riser, and then basically line up the model with the drawing. That's another way to visual ref.
Exactly. Thanks a lot, Javi. Okay, cool. Okay, so I'm gonna move on to the excavation feature right now. We have some excavation is a relatively new feature, like it was rolled out 3 months ago. And we have done several improvements by then, and we noticed that people are using it in different ways, and we could gather a lot of good feedback from different users. And I'm just going to explain a little bit about them right now. Okay, so to create an excavation, you need to create an excavation boundary. So what an excavation boundary, what we're going to do, basically, the action is we're going to replace a part of your map tile of your terrain, but an editable volume. So this editable volume will be a brown shape to simulate dirt that replaces this area over here. So I'm gonna create over here right now, so you will understand what it is. So let's say that, for example, let me bring this model up a little bit so we can visualize where are the foundation limits. So let's say that my excavation actually just gonna happen around this area over here, right? So I'm gonna create an excavation boundary that is something like this. I'm roughly creating over here just so we can save a little bit of time. But right now, this brown shape was created over here, right? So this brown shape, it's kind of like alone in the ground over here. So it may feel a little bit weird. So what I suggest, if you don't like the visuals of the brown shape, what you can do is to expand it a little bit more so it can encompass the whole construction limits that you're gonna have for your site, right? So you can simply edit that polyline by clicking here on this point, and you can start adding some points that to expand that shape a little bit more and make it look like it will fit out the whole site, right? So something like this. And let's say this. Actually, this looks weird. I'm gonna keep it like that. Okay. So now I have this whole brown shape over here that looks way better than it was before, because it really looks like a construction site, right? So I can hit done now and confirm this action. And now I would place my fences around this brown shape, or even a little bit more than that. But just to say that that's my active area of construction limits, okay? And one of the recent updates that we did from having a couple of requests from clients and from internal users as well, is that right now you can hide the shape of your excavation boundaries. So I did it quite fast. Let me bring it back over here. So basically what you can do is you can expand your tree to go into site planning, site works, and you're gonna see this excavation item right now. You can hide and show your brown shape over here, that your excavation boundary, to allow, for example, to allow you to create better section views or better visualizing your MEP, underground MEP systems, and so on and so forth. You can also right click on the brown shape and do a hide object. But now that's gone, the only way to bring it back is by going through the tree and showing that element. Okay. Okay, cool. So I'm gonna create a quick cut over here so we can have an action that we can work around with. So I'm gonna create this cut. I'm doing like very overall actions just so we can save some time, okay? So the cut that is created usually is created, not usually, but by default, it's going to be created 2 meters down from the lowest point that you selected, right? So this sea level elevation over here is a calculation from that lowest point 2 meters down. Okay, so when I hit done, that cut has been done over here. And I'm going to quickly hide my model just to show one of our new features for the excavation, is that now we roll out this option of creating a fill, right? So basically what you can do is you can create a fill at any geometry, and also it will be created with a 2 meter thickness to it, but you can change this to have a sloped wall like this to simulate the stockpiles, or you can create anything that after you create your excavation, detailed excavation, or your bathtub, you can create a field to fill out whatever actions you're going to have, whatever backfill you need around your construction walls. Okay, so this is one thing. And let me see what else we can show over here in terms of tricks. Okay, so let me go into my cut over here, and I'm going to edit this cut that I just created, and I'm going to create a sloped wall for this cut. Okay, so let me create a sloped wall that is a little bit more vertical like this. So whenever I create a slope wall, I cannot add a ramp to this area, because what happens is that I want to create, I need a straight wall to create my ramp. So let's say that I created this cut and its slope, and now I want to add a ramp. What should I do? So what you need to do is you need to go back and you have to create a straight wall. When you hit done, your straight wall is over there. and then you can go back to your fill. Oh, sorry, not fill. You can go back to your positive ramp, and you can add that ramp at any location. And if you need to reposition that ramp, you can click on reposition and select another straight wall. This is going to be done. Now you have a ramp on the location that you need to. Then you go back to your cut and edit that and turn on the sloped wall again. So now you have your sloped wall plus a ramp in your construction site. Okay. Okay, cool. So last thing that I want to show about excavation is you can reuse the excavation shapes to represent different points in time for a shotcrete execution, for example, right? So let's say that you're going to create a shotcrete wall for this area over here, and you have to create several milestones to represent each one of these stages, right? So I'm going to create over here just a couple of milestones and just randomly naming them. And now I'm going to go into my first one where I have my project start. By my project start, I'm going to move my cut from project start to milestone number 1. So now I have my project start with no excavation, and my cut 1 is on my second milestone. I'm going to go ahead and edit this to be a little bit higher than it is right now. And let's say that I want to create a depth, right? Using this point as a reference. I'm simply going to select from map, click on this point, and remove, let's say, 1 meter from this, right? So when I hit done, the excavation, even though it's a bigger shape, is only removing 1 meter for that little corner that is a little bit higher. So now I want to go into my second step over here, and I'm going to create a duplicate from that first point. And you see that a duplicate was created over here. And I can move this duplicate to a second stage and edit the shape of this, and now remove a little bit more, right? So if I go to the next one, I can create a copy again and bring it down, and now edit the details. And let's say put in over here something like this, right? So see, I'm reusing the same shape, but I'm creating different stages of lifts. That would be what you would do on a shotcrete wall kind of execution. Okay.
Pedro, probably important to also note that each one of those cuts are being automatically recorded in the takeoff, right? In the earthwork takeoff. Yeah. You can show how that looks.
Sure. So you see that there is a little takeoff showing up over here. But if you have a lot of more actions of cuts going on the same milestone, fails happening on the same milestone, ramps, and all of these actions, you're going to have like a very complicated excavation plan that has a lot of different stages, which is amazing because it's super fast to create these excavation stages here in cmBuilder. But if, let's say that you want to figure out like, okay, I created all these shapes, I have all my cuts, I have my finalized state, how much dirt did I remove, right? So you can simply click on your earthwork takeoff, and this will show up over here, a quick report of how much dirt was removed for each one of these milestones. You can assign a swell factor over here, depending on the type of soil that you have. And this will adjust your loose volume. You can go to a detailed breakdown where you see every single element that you added to the site. If it's a cut, if it's a ramp, or if it's a fill, you will see the volume for each one of those. And you can export this to a CSV file. For example, that will be a file that you can use to bring into your budgeting software, or you can manipulate those numbers in the way that it's better for you to have a more detailed takeoff, right? Okay. Anything else, Javi, for the excavation? Did I miss anything, Javi, Carl?
Can't think of any. I think, yeah, just obviously detail. If you wanted to get into detail the excavation, you could start cutting out footings and then backfilling the footings, right? And that kind of, those kind of use cases.
Yeah, you can bring in your geotechnical drawings, you can bring in foundation drawings and outline those. Keep in mind that you can do all of these actions with a drawing over here. So if you have a drawing that shows where your foundation pads are, you can simply outline those and keep using them to create those excavation steps. Okay, cool. So now I want to use these last couple minutes that I have to show how to quickly talk to our team, right? So the fastest way to get us to solve something for you or to get your requirement into our backlog and keep working on that, your feature request, it's by clicking on this little question mark over here. And you're going to have three different options to talk to our team. One is a bug report. So is there anything that you clicked and didn't do what you were expecting, or it was working in one way and simply in the other day it's not working for any reason? Let us know and we will figure out if it's a bug or if it's something that we've changed and now it's on a different button or something like that. We will get in touch with you right away. Our team is super on top of the feed to figure this out. So let us know by clicking on the bug report and explaining a little bit about what's happening by filling up this form. And the same thing you can do by doing for the feature request. So whenever let's say that there's something missing, for example, excavation colors. You want to change, you want to have specific colors for different cuts and ramps and fills, right? You want to change the brown color to a different color or add a texture to it. You can simply type in your feature request over here. What is the title? Describe a little bit about the features. If you have a specific requirement, let us know. If you have a screenshot that will allow us to understand better your request, you can simply paste it over here and it will be interesting for us to start working on it right away. And another thing, the last thing about the seeing feedback is that you can also request a resource for us to build for you. So basically, we already have a very extensive library. Let me show you a little bit about our library here. We're very proud of it. So we can go into the temporary works and see all the different fences that we have over here, all the different storage units, scaffolding and platforms, different offices, different cranes, right? So this library right now it has around 200 items. It is only getting bigger because we are getting a lot of resource for customers, and so we take those in high regards. We simply start working on them as soon as they got as soon as the request has been placed. Okay. So these are the three ways that you can talk to our team, that you can ask for support, that you can let us know what we should be working on next. And yeah, that's it. The last thing that I want to talk about on the question mark is that we have also the user guide over here. And this user guide shows the key shortcuts and also like a couple manuals that you can use to help you navigate and use cmBuilder. So if you expand the site plan one, and let's say, for example, you want to know more about excavation, you can go into SiteWorks and click on excavation, and all the excavation features and the ways of using excavation will be over here. But I would like also to pass back to Cal because he wants to show you guys different use for Wiki that is very interesting. Okay.
Perfect, thanks, Pedro. So yeah, as Pedro mentioned, that's the cmWiki has some of the support topics in it, but everyone who has a cmBuilder account, which most of you in the call do, can also use cmWiki for your own purposes, for posting things to the web and sharing things on the web as well. In your cmBuilder account, this is CADMaker's account, so there's a lot more things that I'm sure most of you have, but it'll be a long list of wiki topics. There will be two preloaded in everyone's cmBuilder account when it's first set up, but you can always create more. If you would like to use it for knowledge retention internally amongst your company, you can create topics to store knowledge, to store information, or you could use it to do client deliverables, which is what I'll show you here. So you can create a title for the topic, client deliverables for a particular project. And you can attach a thumbnail, confirm, and that's just going to create a new topic as it was there. You can then create a page which will basically, this is just a web page that you can edit. You can add text, you can add links, you can add pictures, you can add GIFs if you would like, all sorts of different things. And then this, you can actually generate links to share as well. Anyone on your company with the correct permissions can edit these as well. And then when you send the link, I'll give you an example here. If you were to share a site plan, you can generate the link easily through the site plan, as you would generally if you were to share through email or by text. And you can post that in a cmWiki topic. Put it one earlier. So this is the demo project that I just kind of created. This will be the two presentations. The link that I just copied is the same as this one, so I can delete this and replace it just to show how easy it is. Exact same link. And those are the two links to the demo projects. And this is the slide deck that we've been referring to throughout this presentation. It's then very simple to then share this web page. So I can generate a link. You can set the date for whenever. Let's generate a link there. Copy. So I'm trying to fight with some Zoom command bars here. I can copy that, and I'll just share with the chat. And I encourage everyone to go to the link to access the slide deck, download the slide deck, as well as view some of the demo project presentations and scenarios that we're seeing throughout today. Thanks very much, and open the floor to questions if anyone has any.
Let me just add one more thing to the wiki. So the wiki is just like most people understand what a wiki is. Great place to grab information, knowledge throughout your organization, collaborate on projects. How we use it at CAD Makers a lot is, say on a project, we have to send a number of deliverables, Excel sheets, reports, models. It's one-stop shop that can be updated automatically, and you can share with external collaborators really easily, keep track of those things. So it's very useful. We use it every single day in our company. And there's even more to that. So if there's anyone here that wants to have some demonstration or a session just focused on how they can leverage Wiki within their organization, we'd be happy to do that. All right, questions? Anybody? Got a couple minutes left. We can always get you out of here early, but if there's any questions that come in.
While the questions are coming in, one thing that I always also like to use cmWiki for is an internal knowledge retention system, right? So not just you show up like deliverables, but let's say that you as a company figure out like the best way of using cmBuilder on your day-to-day processes. You can log that into cmWiki and have your own way of creating things, your own personal custom process retain it over there. And every time that someone new comes in or you want to share that with a teammate, you can simply refer them to a cmWiki page that will have the most updated information about how to use that. So it's kind of like we have our own page of like a user guide, but you can create yours as well. You can bring in your own information. So it's very interesting.
Oh, there's a question there from Carl. So it didn't show up in the big chat. Excavation stages, can we see how it goes into the milestones when you created 3 different levels in the example? So maybe Pedro, if you can bring back, how would you now link those to milestones, the different stages?
Yeah, so you can only create excavation stages with the milestones, right? So if I go back over here and open the excavation, you see that over here we have these accordions that shows what are the weeks that I'm working on, right? So if I go back and forth on this, you see that I'm highlighting specific milestones that I'm active at the moment, right? So you can only show the stages if you have the milestones connected to it. But it doesn't mean that you can only, you won't be able to create one single stage of excavation. Basically, what you can do is you can put all of the excavation stages in one single milestone, and we will calculate the final volume by simply going through the different actions, right? So, for example, let me put back all of these cuts into the excavation stage number 1. So you see that even though we have 3 cuts over here, the last one is deeper than all the others combined. So it means that this is how the final shape looks like. But if I want to see the visuals up to this step, I can just like inactivate the others and show visuals up to this step. But all of these actions are happening in one single milestone. So if I go back and forth right now, the only difference is that when I get to milestone on the week 2, all the excavation has been done. If I keep going on the other milestones, if they don't have any excavation actions to happen, they will simply, the excavation will stay put, and yeah, you capture those stages.
I think it's a useful use case would be, for example, showing, let's say, a pile driving equipment or ramps or equipment coming to the site in one milestone. You may want to show multiple things and even maybe move the camera and be able to collect it all into one. That's a useful use case for having it all in one milestone. Or if you may be looking at things by the week, you can see how things progress.
Yeah,
inside that week.
Exactly.
Right. Got a couple more minutes. Oh, looks like we got another question. If the ramp changes position during excavation, is it also saved in the milestone or steps, Pedro?
If the ramp changes position, okay, so to capture that, let me do that action over here. So let's say that I have a ramp that is at this stage over here, right? So I'm gonna add a ramp at this stage on the week 3. I'm gonna create a positive ramp over here, okay? So let's say that on the next milestone, what is gonna happen, I want a ramp to start from this other end because now this got way too deep, right? So let me delete this over here just to show how it works. So now on a milestone that doesn't have any action, so let's say that I want to create a ramp at the stage that I want to cut deeper, right? So I'm gonna duplicate the cut that is doing the cut, the final cut for everything. So let's go into the edit details. I can see what is the polyline that is creating this cut at any time by clicking on edit polyline. And now I'm gonna go and create a deeper excavation step, right? So I'm gonna go to 86, for example. So now, because this cut happened over here, it's removing everything that is on top of that polygon, including the ramp. So it means that I can now add another ramp on this other end, right? So if I do that, I can put this ramp over here and confirm. And if I go through my milestones, the ramp is in one end on the previous milestone, but then on this milestone, I created a bigger cut that removed that ramp as well, pushed down the bottom of the excavation a little bit lower, and then I created and added another ramp at this side, right? So you show the different locations of ramps depending on the milestone.
Okay, there's one more. Is there a way to keep notes as you develop the model to help explain what assumptions were? Maybe call outs, maybe
yes,
one way to do it?
Call outs is one idea. Call outs one idea, but also the wiki is another idea. You can keep a log of the changes that you created, of the assumptions that you created within the wiki. So you can keep creating pages that would collect all the changes that has been done. But let me show you how to create a quick call out over here that would create, that are stored within the models, right? So like it's stored within the milestone. So if I'm active on this milestone and I decide to create a markup, it means that whatever markup I create right now is going to show up for that milestone specifically. So I'm going to create one call out over here that points out that ramp is moved to the east side because of depth of excavation. So something like this, right? So you can keep your assumptions saved in these markups, and if you decide to resolve them at some point, you can simply delete the call out, and so on and so forth, or keep the call out, but remove them from your presentation if you need to. Okay. I think that we have one more question.
Yeah, why don't we quickly answer at the moment? So in terms of cost, so when you develop the quantity from the excavation, can you inside the app define the cost? Go ahead, Pedro.
Yeah, so as of now, you cannot define a specific cost per excavation stage because we're going to expand the excavation feature to account for different soil types in the future as well, different showing capabilities for different walls. So this all also affects the cost, but we need to go through the modeling part of it first. But what you can do for now is you can simply get your earthwork takeoff and export this to a CSV file and bring it to any other budgeting software and open that and define your costs and bring it to your schedule, bring into your scheduling software, for example, right?
Yeah, so more to come on that question in the near future. Okay, well, we're just a minute over, so why don't we wrap it there? Just want to say thanks, Pedro, Cal, and for everyone that's joining. And if you have any questions as a user, you can always email support@cmBuilder.io, or you can just contact Pedro, Cal, or myself, and we'll jump on it. But really appreciate everyone taking the time, and hopefully this was useful. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.